Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reviews where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Cui Jian, titled Flying, and if we switch over to here, I apologize if my my pronunciation of the name is horrific. We're going to be checking out the song Flying today. This is a request from a happy man, Jacob, which is good. Be good to check it out. It's been a while since I listened to this musician. Going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it. Let's go. What do we got? I kind of dig the scratchiness of the guitar, you know? Great 16th note groove there. Hippie staccato of the saxophone here is really cool. I love the tension there. I love how raucous the tone of it is. Real surreal tone to the cymbals. The sound design is really interesting too, the sub-layering of things, how subtle things are in comparison to others. I mean, it's just squealing, isn't it? That was fantastic. It was a really unique experience. It's been a while since I listened to Cui Jian's music. I'm sorry again if I'm mispronouncing that. If someone can let me know how to pronounce it in the comments, that'd be great. Thank you. But yeah, I'm gonna look for a version of lyrics in English if I can find them, and we're gonna talk about this track more in the conclusion. So, as per Genius, we have found lyric translations now. For those of you who are familiar with how things go, actually, can I make the screen big? Will that allow me to zoom in more? No, it kind of will. So I'm sorry if this is little. It's just that I don't really have a choice because the way that Genius works is if you zoom in, it consistently has the lyrics on the left side so that they can do this one little bit of advertising on the right. I think it's very much optimized for mobile. But the English translation, I've absolutely no use for those gadgets. I'm already feeling dizzy and weak. Surrounded by the smell of human beings, it can only make me ponder the games people play. Like, I kind of understand where the flying might come in with the feel my body floating part. Am I different from everyone else, like a red dot in the grey? All around me is the smell of fire burning ambiguously between helplessness and rage. Is that the people that are just kind of stuck in the in-between? Is that right? Suddenly I step onto air and my body feels high. I'm flying alone. I feel like I've become a heroic bird. I keep flying between the sun and the smog. Okay, I kind of get what this track about. I'm really glad that I checked out the lyrics. Yeah, let's do the conclusion. Oh, hang on. The night I secretly fly back in the dark. I'm surrounded by the same smell as before. The thing I'm looking up for is not up in the air. I'm sure it is down here, nowhere else. A few days later, they finally found me. All around the expression in their eyes is wrong. Suddenly, that fire ignites the air. I want to take flight, but I can't get off the ground. Oh no, you're definitely going to the conclusion with this one. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Cui Jian. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Titled Flying. I'm going to try not to butcher it anymore. In this section, I'm going to be talking about a few things. It's an overall song analysis, including what I think the track's about. And it's also going to be any applicable constructive critique as well as my overall thoughts on it from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do I think this track is about? I think, judging by the experience that we have with the lyrics, I think this track is about someone who is in an environment where they just feel suffocated by the smog and the fire and everything like that, and they eventually get to a point where they kind of attain a sense of being able to sort of get away from that. They find their one time they can get out of that mire, away from everyone else, kind of wondering if their journey is different to others. That they escape and they kind of gain a sense of maybe self-awareness or like clarity of sport, but then they make the mistake potentially of thinking that what they actually want is back where they came from, because they're still searching for something, and then they realize they cannot go back up again. The track in a way kind of sort of like hides the seriousness of it. As someone who isn't familiar with the language, I don't speak it natively, it kind of like walks you around the nose a little bit, especially once you've found it out afterwards. But I appreciate the way that it is sung by Cui Jian. So I literally looked up a guy, Cui Jian. Hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that. Hopefully the video I got it from isn't mispronouncing that. But I think that the way that the vocalist, I'm just going to play it safe, sings in this track is really almost kind of weirdly playful. There's a really wonderful rhythm and flow to the way that he voices himself across with the rapping. And it's almost like it's kind of melancholic, because if you consider the breadth or the depth of what's being described within the lyrics, you'd think there'd be more of an emotional journey there. But I think for for everyone involved, it's just another sort of day in the park potentially, you know. Maybe it is all just grey and we're having sort of false sort of like premonitions of it being grander than it is. I think a lot of the instruments, such as the saxophones with a lot of the kind of accented notes, maybe sort of communicate more of the intensity or the drama or suspense of it than what we're doing with Sui's kind of light parts. But there's almost this kind of gritty, kind of almost grotesque sound to some parts of the saxophone in the lower end there, and it kind of maybe imitates, like in a playful way, and not trying to be too sort of like serious about it, but I think it meters out the equilibrium between the intensity of what the instruments are doing and the lyrics with Sui's kind of like sort of vocal style there being a bit more sort of like casual in a weird way. Because there's some kind of like vocal fry there in some of the parts and the chanting there, but then we have some really pretty harmonies with the backing vocals as a call and response. It's a really interesting piece there. I think it's just a kind of really funky, catchy groove there. Maybe almost like we're trying to sort of communicate we're going through something heavy, but also trying to make it approachable for people that aren't at the point where they're sort of as sensitive to that yet, like they're going through their own sort of spell of being on the ground, unable to get out. And there's several of these sort of rapped verses which I feel are effective. We're very clear with our voicing. We're kind of quiet and mixed from a production perspective, but I think there's just a really kind of busy track, and maybe we're trying to sort of act as if the music is trying to sort of be in place to the environment almost sort of literally. So the fact that the vocals are kind of getting drowned out a little bit is kind of par for the course. It's very colloquial. It's really interesting storytelling. I quite like the unique approach to it. I would not have known that it was like this from the tone of voice that's being discussed here, but I just think it's kind of getting the best of both worlds, having your cake and eating it too, sort of thing, from a songwriting and sort of functional single perspective. So ultimately, I feel like the vocals are really well handled, and I enjoyed listening through them. I think that they deliver the idea of the lyrics in a way where we've almost kind of accepted our fate in some respect and we're not trying to over dramatize it. I like that it's not too on the nose in that respect. The track itself at 5 minutes 30 is really well fleshed out. There are so many interesting instrumental components there. There are various sort of verses and choruses, but there is a lot of space to be able to appreciate everything outside of what's happening on the mic. From the moment you come into it, you have this kind of scratchy, really kind of mysterious, tense, dramatic tone on the guitars there, and it really does kind of make you feel like there's something kind of like horrific going to occur, like something's going to come out of the shadows. But then you kind of have this kind of spooky, warbly, sort of tremolo picked or kind of like alternate picked part there, as you see in the video, people coming down to play in the band, and then it moves into this kind of 16th note groove that's very funky, with an alternate guitar take kind of sort of materializing a sense of pace within it and making it a little bit less atmospheric. I like that the drums come in afterwards and they formulate this kind of 8th note cymbal, 16th note groove on the kick and snares, and we have this flow that works really neatly with a similar sort of 16th note flow to the vocal parts. We have alternate percussion as well, accenting certain notes on the quarters or eighths as well, and I think the kind of rustic tone of the alternate percussion, as well as those really kind of spooky cymbals that we have on the cymbals in certain part, those alternate percussions there, they just kind of add a bit of sinister aftertone to it, make it sort of sound a little bit ghostly. It lets you know there's a bit more than meets the eye. The peppiness, the punchiness of that saxophone when it comes in either on the low or the higher range there, with a variety of different expressions within it, it is just so opinionated. It works well, almost like an emotional contrast or juxtaposition to what is happening on the mic. It's got a really kind of relaxed, kind of bouncy flow with the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, those melodies on there, and it makes the most of the space that is allowed for it with the non-melodic vocal parts. I mean, like they are, but like not, we're clearly not singing it at that point. You know, there's room for color within the arrangement. There are these interesting chords on the guitar as well. There's a kind of grainy kind of saltiness to it. It's very tense with some of the flat seconds or the diminished triads that we have on certain parts of the guitar. That with kind of like the foil work of the scratchy intro parts. There's just so many sound decisions that elevate it more than just a well-played piece. And we almost have this kind of unusual extension before the kind of catchier chorus element there across the guitars and the cymbals with the white notes that they're playing because they're pitched. And we know how to build that tension or drama before allowing it to go into the new moment, into the part where we kind of want people to sort of continue to go back to nodding their heads along. And to be fair, because I'm checking through things, this is more a very sort of like interesting journey where you kind of get sucked into it and you lose track of certain things. There's parts where Xiu is more intense with his vocals. There is Fry, we're calling out, but it's such a glued mix, whether because of the post compression on the various sort of video forms before this is uploaded to YouTube. It's kind of a mist, like there's a mistiness to it, like a fogginess to it. Like we're going through our own head for these things with the kind of tension of there's like flutes or like other instruments that play these really uncomfortable sort of like alternating notes kind of fluttering, and it's again, it's very dramatic. And if you were to ignore that or not to include that, you'd think this is a much more sort of relaxed environment than it actually is. But it's such a clever, simple guitar riff with the bar chords behind it as well. It kind of rolls with this root note or unison note that ties everything together. It's just really clever. I think as well, the dynamic range with the saxophones in parts and really playing for time, pushing and pushing what the listener might have already sort of adjusted to with the kind of zaniness of certain parts. It's a track where like you kind of lose yourself a little bit in it, and then you kind of pull yourself back out and you're like, oh wait, what is this? What's happening now? They know how to stretch a 5-minute 30 track out in a way that's very interesting. And the reason I'm kind of going through the instrumental parts as I talk about the structure is just to kind of give an idea of what it's like. Like I know you've literally just heard it, but there are just so many cool and concepts that are being amalgamated here. And like the bass in certain parts, it kind of resolves to that low note and it accents it and it kind of thuds in the mix, and you get a rhythmic unison with certain parts as well to kind of coalesce with that. And it's just sharp, you know. It's again that contrast or juxtaposition between how we want one thing to seem what the other thing actually is. And with like the sub-laying of certain kind of glitchy guitar parts there, or chords that are deliberately kind of contrasting within the key signature, you know, you have these moments where you wonder how much was deliberate and how much was to cause chaos. Like I'm wondering if that kind of sharp sort of flute or woodwind is like a Suona or something like that. I'm not sure, but like I could be wrong. It's just the composition is enthralling, despite the fact that it's relatively predictable with a lot of its main sort of guitar, bass, and drum components. It's a song where there is enough going on with the extra ear candy on the saxophone, other sort of older percussions and stuff like that, to spice it up and keep it sort of enthralling for the duration of the 5.5 minutes with no filler. I think additional to that, it's just really quite wonderful how the theme itself revolves around a major component for a lot of it, working with like a dominant seventh maybe for the main chord on top of the root note. But then you have again these diminished and sort of like extensions, triads, and like flat seconds and other uncomfortable moments there that really sort of decorate in a way that makes you sort of think twice about whether it really is as happy as it seems. So ultimately, just harmonically fantastic. In regard to the different sort of lead parts, whether sub leads or mains or alts or call and responsive Hugh's parts on the mic, I loved it unconditionally, and there's just enough in different parts to decorate and provide a sense of ear candy that's very satisfying, whilst providing also a really sort of like comfortable passive listening experience without a note out of place. It's just a really well performed track, and I sound like I'm glazing it, and it's because I am. I haven't heard a song like this in quite a while. I appreciate the rustic, raw, organic tone of it. I just think it's just people who can play their instruments well in a room sort of jamming things out, and it's just wonderful. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, I discussed this with the understanding that I think this has gone through several layers of either being uploaded and downloaded to different social medias. So there's a bit of compression on the actual audio quality itself. I assume the original version will have a bit of more difference between the quiet and loud notes, a little bit less kind of digital kind of fragmentation or artificing on certain parts. But what I can hear of the guitars, bass, drums, the vocals, the saxophones, phonos, or like woodwinds, the alternate percussions, etc., anything else that's involved, sounds really clear. I enjoyed listening to it in this form. I'm sure the original is even better. I think that leveling and how things are spread around a stereo field is fantastic. I like that certain things are just quieter because it just makes sense to add more sort of dimensionality to the piece. I assume there is dynamic range to the track as a whole, and it's nice and low without pumping, so the bus compression limiting is handled. And again, I mentioned that I thought the vocals were a little bit quiet sometimes. I say that primarily because I feel like it's a deliberate decision on the part of the mixing engineer to have Sui list a little bit quieter so you kind of look for them in there. And it kind of fits more, I think, appropriately with the story. I will also make a final note that I think that there's this kind of movement between the march that goes on with the 16-note drum groove and then the parts where you have the lack of percussion and things just kind of float with the do-do-do-do-do-do note. It's almost like we're going into a daze or into sort of like a hypnotic lull, and then we're being brought back out of it to chant along with it. There are just some really cool, I've said this a lot, I'm really impressed with what they're trying to do here, and the symbolism is important. I don't have any applicable constructive critique here. I feel like it's just a really well-rounded track from a musician who clearly knows what they're doing, and the fundamentals are adhered to. In terms of my overall thoughts as a listener, it kind of makes me feel a little bit sad that I can't understand it natively. But I also think that it's okay, in a sense, to have an experience with a song where if you don't understand it, you still enjoy it, because it just shows the strength of the actual music itself. I feel like if you need to understand the lyrics of a song to enjoy it, you're therefore more reliant on the story itself being the closing factor on it. And while I do believe that that's nonetheless important, it's really important to understand the story that a musician is telling. I'm not trying to discount that. It's more that for me, the vocals are often the icing on the cake. If the music itself is wonderful, if the vocal melodies are really effective, if the textures and tones and everything like that, and the production and everything is listed really wonderfully, then being able to know what the words mean is the icing on the cake. And it's not a given that I give to many English-speaking musicians. I don't always know what the English people are saying with their words. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to know, especially with the kind of hard rock and metal that I listen to with growlies. But I enjoyed listening through this. It makes me want to listen to more of Cui Jian's music. Thank you again to Happy Man Jacob for this request. And thank you for watching my review of this track from my nickname Cui Jian, titled Flying. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP reviews. Spiderhands out.